What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Madonna, and we are moving to the next chapter, which is to say Ray of Light, 1998. Thank you again to Mark for sharing the albums, as well as to Luca for being very vocal. And I noticed when I just put this album on my music computer, it actually features The Power of Goodbye. Folks may remember in the early phase of the Madonna journey, I talked about only really being familiar with some of her big hits from the 80s, and one tune from later, which is The Power of Goodbye, which was introduced to me by a girlfriend I had in high school, and it took on some personal significance in that regard. I think it's a beautiful tune. I have deliberately not listened to it in the last, year and a half, 2 years since I've been deep diving on Madonna, because I'm looking forward to experiencing it with a degree of freshness when we get to this. And as I said, I noticed it's on this album, so it's not too far into the future. But the rest of the track names don't come back to me, so I would estimate that I have not heard anything else on this record, and if I have, certainly not enough to remember it by name. So, in any case, yes, I'm looking forward to the album, and the first track I noticed has like a two-part title. Make sure I have this right. Yeah, it's Drowned World, which is a very intense phrase, and Substitute for Love. And not only are those two interesting phrases independently, but their connection, or their being two parts of this song title, is even more intriguing. So a drowned world is one which is submerged, one which for those of us who respirate air would not be able to live, and in that regard it makes me think that by extension, by metaphor, one can be drowned if you can't breathe emotionally. And then substitute for love means something that is being offered or is found in place of genuine love, and may function, at least superficially, in a similar manner, but is not as enriching or nourishing, and thus would ultimately be an insufficient simulacrum, an insufficient replacement for love itself. So both titles, or both parts of the title, sound less than ideal, sound like there is an absence of genuine feeling, or a feeling that can be survived upon. So yeah, it sounds like we're heading into painful territory, which, to be fair, a lot of Madonna songs have dealt with pain, sometimes in a more abstract or figurative way, sometimes very directly, and from what I understand, autobiographically. So yeah, I don't quite know what to expect here, but I would not be surprised if there's pain in the tune. So let's give it a listen. This is the first track on Madonna's Ray of Light album, 1998, and the tune is Drowned World / Substitute for Love.
who settled for the thrill, basking in my spotlight. I never felt so happy. The face of you, my substitute for love, my substitute for love. Should I wait for you, my substitute for love, my substitute for love? Famous faces, far off places, trinkets I can buy. No handsome stranger, heady danger, drug that I can try. No Ferris wheel, no heart to steal, no laughter in the dark. No one night stand, no far off land, no fire that I can face of you, my substitute for love, my substitute for love. Should I wait for you, my substitute for love, my substitute for love?
You see,
Now I find I've changed my mind. This is my religion.
Wow. What an album opener. I mean, I talked about it when we were going through the stuff from the early 90s, how it's like, okay, most of what I knew from Madonna was that very catchy, like, electronic synth pop sound from the mid-80s when she emerged and became a big star, and I love that stuff. I think it's fantastic. But as we got to the later part of the 80s and into the early 90s, it's like, oh, wow, she's really heading in the direction of, like, R&B, sometimes with, like, hip-hop influences, and also, you know, even like jazzy or like, let's say, more natural instrument type of sounds, and you could hear her shifting her stylings. And so it is here. This feels very far away from the early 90s, and, you know, in a way it reminds me of the one tune I do know from this album, because The Power of Goodbye has these ambient and like electronica style soundscapes, and that's very much the case here. It has this ambient down-tempo quality to it. And I guess, like, summing it up in terms of my thoughts sonically after this first track is it sounds like she's reached a new maturity and sophistication by this time with her music. Now, again, that is in no way to suggest that, you know, sonically, never mind lyrically, where, you know, there's been sophisticated concepts from the early phase, and certainly some of the stuff in the first half of the 90s was, you know, very well written and, like, you know, personally heart-wrenching and, like, socially and culturally observant and critical, and so I've praised her songwriting, and rightly so. But, like, sonically, this feels like an evolution already. It feels like a more mature, so it's like it's electronic sounding, but not in the same way as the mid-80s synth pop. And sure, some of that relates to, you know, evolving production techniques and stylings in popular music more generally. But yeah, it doesn't sound like the, you know, R&B stylings of a lot of the stuff on the first couple albums, or the last couple albums that I've gone through. and there's a depth and a like space in the sonic. So love the composition, love those like, you know, drum flourishes, which again have a bit of a like breaks electronica sound to them. I love the deep and lush like soundscape and the like pads behind it, and her voice like very elegant, very melodic, and very, you know, human and emotional. Lyrically, I'm, you know, still trying to sort through what I heard, but okay, it sounds like it's addressed to someone specifically, and that they, like maybe their face, but ultimately they more generally are her substitute for love, and it sounds like maybe that's because they haven't reciprocated in kind, so her love is a bit unrequited, so she has to take what she can get, and she's wondering if he'll ever, you know, become her true love or her lover in a more full and comprehensive sense. She does talk about like, you know, lovers who maybe didn't live up to that or one night stands, but it also sounds like she's maybe making comments more broadly, not just about her own personal, emotional, and romantic narrative. But yeah, it sounds like again, she's in a drowned world maybe because this other person isn't giving her everything she would want or everything that she's laying out there and, you know, being vulnerable about, and so she has to take this substitute for love because, you know, it's all that's available, at least in the current context, though it does sound like she's projecting into the future and wondering what may happen. So yeah, again, it sounds like the lyrics are well crafted and with emotional nuance and, you know, a complicated emotional dynamic, not just a like, oh, it's so great or oh, I'm so sad. It's like somewhere in between, which, you know, the concept substitute for love, it feels like that's driving in that nuanced and complex direction. But bottom line, love this one, an incredible opener, and based on this and my knowledge of the power of goodbye, if this album has more or less this type of sound, and of course I expect it to have some diversity of style and sound, but if this is the general territory that it's in, this, you know, down-tempo electronica, you know, a bit of an electronic sound mixed with these spacious sonic environments, I'm definitely here for it. So once again, shout out to Mark and to all those who've been commenting on the Madonna reactions thus far. We shall now see if I can transition Luca to the chair with minimal interruption. Just a slight objection, but she seems to have recovered. Do let me know what you think, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.